Arcus and Kanida arrive at an inn called the Sleepy Slink after a full day of training. While Arcus inconspicuously scopes out the lively inn, Arcus and Kanida arrive at an inn called the Sleepy Slink after a full day of training. While Arcus inconspicuously scopes out the lively inn, Kanida is immediately pulled into the scene of the place, enjoying herself just being there. She has never been inside of an inn before, only had the chancing glance of staring into one. It looked cozy enough, and she always wondered what it would be like to be inside of one. The people seemed to be jovial and always chatty, laughing and drinking. She wanted to know what it felt like to be a part of that, instead of always standing outside looking in. She'd take her time soaking in the warmth of the place, the flickering flames of the hearth fire giving the enclosure a very inviting feel. The lively folk loudly talked to one another, telling wild tales of their travels, or jokes that seemed to erupt everyone into bolstering laughter. The fruity aroma of mead and other assortment of drinks filled Kanida's nose and watered her mouth, and she was poised to steal a drink from these drunks for herself. She found her way sliding close to one of the patrons' table, unnoticed by them, and pilfered their drink without a second thought. But before she could try a swig of the enticing intoxication, she was suddenly pulled away by the scruff of her tethered tunic, forcing her to land the tankard back onto the wooden table unsampled. "Hey!" she loudly exclaims and goes to turn around to confront whomever whisked her away from her, one chance to try some of the good stuff, like the adults did, only to then find that it was Arcus who had pulled her away. She tried to free herself from his insistent pulling, but couldn't get away. He managed to pull her with him right to the front counter of the inn, and proceeded to speak to the woman standing there about inn services. The plump women looked pleased to see them, a bright smile on her face. She greeted them with enthusiasm and asked about their business here. "We would like to spend the night here at the inn, if you please," Arcus goes to say to the woman with a formal. The woman clasps her hands together and accepts. "Certainly. Is that one room for you and your wife here?" As she says this, she looks over to Kanida and smiles wider. "You two are adorable, I must say." Kanida flushed madly in the face and shook her head vividly with her hands held up in defense. She seemed to back away from the smiling woman. Her words in an attempt to correct the woman only came out in blathering stutters. As she backs away, she bumps into Arcus, who then wraps his arm around her shoulder and pressed her closer against him. "Yes, it is. One room for us. Please, if you will." Arcus smiles wider at the lady, then down to Kanida, who looked up at him with a red, burning face and eyes wide, as if asking him what in the blazing hells was he talking about. He only raised his brows at her and returned his attention to the lady at the front counter, who was now busy writing something inside of a lodger. "May I please have your names?" "Crowley, and my wife's name is—" Arcus seemed to stall in his otherwise quick-thinking lie. Kanida then took that moment to catch on to the lie and chimed in with her own name. "Wicket! My name is Wicket." "Certainly, I'll have our staff set up your room right away. Just give me a moment." The lady goes back to writing their names into the lodger and rang up several of the inn's staff with the call of a bell. Arcus slowly looked down at Kanida, seemingly impressed by her ability to also lie on the spot. He didn't even think she was capable of lying to begin with. Kanida didn't look his way, her hot, wide-eyed face facing forward the entire time. Even as they were being shown to their single room, Kanida could not bring herself to look at anyone for the time being, her mind set on the lie beforehand. As they were shown to their room, the busboy whom had brought them there offered them additional serves the inn provided, such as drinks brought up to their room, or even a bard to sit outside the room and sing them a nightly tune as they settled in. All this to which Arcus refused with a polite shake of his head and waver of his hand near his nose. "We thank you, but that won't be necessary." The busboy bows his head and turns to retreat to his other duties, leaving Arcus and Kanida alone. Once he was sure that the busboy was out of range and far from sight, Arcus quickly closed the door and began to frantically search around the room. Kanida quietly watched him as his long strides quickly took him around the rather large room. He looked inside of the wooden cabins, the nightstands closest, even under the beds, sheets and blankets. He'd go to toss out the fruit that was laid out for them, much to Kanida's disbelief. He seemed to be searching for something. "What are you looking for?" Kanida asked rather sorely, clearly upset over the wasted fruit. "Traps," Arcus said as he peered under the bed. She did not know that his long legs could bend that way. It looked like it would hurt. "Traps? Traps for what?" After a moment of searching under the bed and a long pause, Arcus stood up and placed his knuckles to his hip, seemingly satisfied with not finding any said traps. He clicked his attention to the curious Kanida and walked up to her in only a few steps, placing his hands on her shoulder and smiling. "Nothing you should worry about." In that given time of the lie told before, Kanida was quick to learn when he was lying to her now. "Does it have to do with you not using your real name?" Arcus's facade of a smile seemingly dimmed, but quickly returned. The look of genuine pride now creased his mug, though Kanida would not read this. "You are a smart one." Kanida just blinked at him, assuming he'd continue and tell her the truth, to which Arcus obliged. "There are certain people looking for me, dangerous people. People one should not mess with, however, I am not the average person." Arcus clicked his teeth and looked to the side, seemingly in some regret over that statement. Kanida screwed her face and peered into him with her head askew. "Did you steal from them?" "Sorta," Arcus quickly admitted, his head turned to her again. He seemed to be smiling again, this time somewhat sheepishly, but still held some pride to it. "Let's say that these people, these wealthy beings, well, they sort of had it coming to them." "Coming to them?" Kanida blinked hard and shook her head. Arcus clicked his teeth again in thought and tapped the astute young thief on her shoulder before he'd stand up straight. He'd walk over to the single-paned window and peered out of it. He looked both sides, then forward, then one last long look as he body turned to walk away from it. "There are people in this world, Kanida, that will do wicked things for wicked reasons." His head finally turned with the rest of his body to look at her again. There was no smile on his face this time. Kanida slowly sat on the bed as he talked, trying to comprehend the Volcari's words. He often talked a lot to her, and in quick sessions. Usually it was all ramble to her, but this felt serious to her, and she opted to listen closely. Arcus saw the imminent need for the girl to sit down and sighed, seemingly slowing down for her. "I know this is a bit much for you and out of the blue, but try to keep up, Kanida. I know you know that this is important somehow, so I will try to keep it at a level of your understanding. There is a lot to this that you don't know, but in due time you will understand. With my help, I surmise and hope that you will understand quicker, for your safety." Kanida nodded, but said nothing. "I know what happened to you, Kanida, why you're alone in this state, stealing from others just to survive. I don't know exactly what happened before you decided to embark on this path. However, I know the sense of lost lingers inside of you." Kanida's eyebrows furrowed and her eyes locked on Arcus, even as he walked over to her and knelt down to eye level with her. As far as she knew, she never told anyone of why she was on her own, how she left her brothers behind because of a foolish choice that blinded her mind from listening to her heart. She clutched at her chest subconsciously and her canine-like ears reeled back. She felt like someone was looking into her mind and heart, and she attempted to hide them for protection. Yet she never moved away from the supposed threat responsible for such a foreign feeling. Arcus bit back his bottom lip and flicked his eyes from both yellow-wide discs of the girl before he'd continue. "You know the difference between right and wrong, good and evil and such. You know more than you need to know, but you do know. This knowledge, this sense of knowing and learning will ultimately land you into trouble. However, because of this, you must be aware of everything and everyone around you. You must be vigilant of your surroundings at any given point, even in familiar places, especially in familiar places. Does that make sense to you?" Kanida found her head automatically nodding before she could verbally answer. "Yes." "Good. In any case, as much as you are aware to this, there are others who are also aware of this, which means that you will be constantly watched, which means that there are those who will try to take your life away from you." "You mean kill me? Why?" I haven't done anything to them. Regardless, they want that precious life of yours, but you will not give it to them. You will promise me that you will do everything in your power to keep yourself alive and to see this whole thing through till the very end." Arcus was now dangerously close to Kanida's face, who was too wrapped into what he was saying to notice, but she felt her heart beating at a rate that could be felt through her chest. Arcus continued on. "You must follow every word that I give to you thus far. You must become my apprentice of life, and through this journey we embark. You must follow my advice, though they might come out as commands to you. You must stand aside yourself and heed my words to you. They may not understand your reasons behind what you do, but they will try to steal it anyhow. We may be thieves of the world, but these vile creatures, these fiends, are the thieves of what sets in our heart. I know this all sounds mushy, but you have to believe what it is I'm telling you. You must be weary of all that you meet thus far, lest you are to survive all of this. The wars of this land may be over, but we are still in a conflict of struggle and strife. But stick by me, kid. We will get through this." Arcus suddenly stands up and heaves out another sigh, then looks down at Kanida, who peers up at him with confusion in her eyes, but she seemed stuck on what he had to say. "I know that got a bit heavy there, but trust me, it's for your own good. Now I think it's time for us to get some sleep." As if to dismiss that entire conversation, Arcus moves away from the bewildered Kanida and took a seat that was stationed near the door. He'd sit down and crossed his long leg over his knee and crossed his arms. As if she had been holding her breath the entire, Kanida breathed out and inhaled deeply, her hand to her chest clutched tighter at where her heart was. It was as if she was put under a spell for the entire duration of that talk, just for it to be suddenly lifted off, leaving her feeling mentally exhausted. "Arcus, why?" "I know," he cut off. "Get some sleep, Kanida. You need it." Kanida slowly nodded and began to set herself into bed. She'd lay herself down on top of the thinly layered fur blankets and folded her hands under her head. She shifted slightly as she tried to get comfortable and closed her eyes. It was only a few minutes before she would open her eyes again and look to where Arcus sat, looking directly at her. She quickly looked away at anything they'd lay on other than him. Another few moments of silence would pass by and her attention would drift outside the window and at the starry sky. The full face of the Lunas stared back at her. Its bright light illuminated the darkened room. The candle that was once lit had been blown out, leaving the two travelers in darkness, save for the natural light of the night. Kanida took several minutes of staring out of the window before she was forced to turn away from the staring eyes of her tutor, who had not looked away from her, not even as she turned away from him, her back facing him. He knew that she could not sleep, and why. Having trouble sleeping? Kanida did not answer, nor turn around to look at him. Arcus sighed and bowed his head before looking out of the same window she had wistfully stared out at. "I suppose I am to blame for that. I can't stop thinking about them," Kanida quietly said in a small voice, her arms finding their way around her body, though she wasn't cold. Arcus peered into her. "Your family?" Kanida finally turned around and sat up in the bed, looking at the end of the bed's wooden post near her feet. "My two brothers, Rubis and Sol." Kanida moved her hands from hugging at her arms and smoothed them down her legs and towards her calf, where she paused as she talked. "I don't know where they are or even if they're okay." "What happened between you and them?" Arcus asked, helping what her heart wanted to say. Kanida winced at the question and sighed before looking up. She seemed to be struggling back tears as she confessed. "I left them behind because of a stupid fight I had with them." Arcus listened on without saying another word. "My brother, Rubis, he told me something he was struggling with, probably for a long time, and I just blew up on him." Kanida raised her head towards the ceiling of the room, her tears burning the edges of her eyes before they flooded down her cheeks. She shook her head, trying to shake off the emotions she was feeling. She wasn't at all versed in letting her feelings be known. However, in this moment of seemingly security, she felt the need to express her guilt over what happened between her and her siblings to someone, whether it was intentional or not. He was grieving and in pain over the loss of our family, like Sol and I, maybe even more so, and yet I just didn't consider that at all, and blamed him for it all. The Elkai Dominion, Arcus finished, his head leaned to the side, allowing her to continue. Kanida pulled her legs close to her chest and hugged them. She then rested her chin on top of her knees and allowed her vision to stare off into the distance while her mind revisited the moment she broke up with her brothers. He tried to confide in me what had been bothering him for years, and instead of understanding him, I blamed him for what happened. He was only a kid at the time. He couldn't control the events that would happen, nor could he control what happened prior. As the law goes, our kind is not allowed to use magicka, nor are we supposed to use our bestial forms at any given time. We are completely banned from it, and doing so is considered a serious crime for us. I am aware, Arcus deeply said. Rubis told me he was the reason the Elkai Dominion slaughtered our clan. He told me how he had used magicka to defend himself against some bullies that often beat him up. He was very small at the time, so I can easily see that, however. These bullies ratted him to the chief, who then ordered a punishment to be done to Rubis. Our father, of course, wanted to protect Rubis and tried to find a way to lift the punishment off of him. He talked the chief into sparing Rubis's life. Kanida blinked and turned her head towards the wall, trying to figure out exactly how the Elkai got involved. Somehow, someone informed the Elkai Dominion of our situation. I don't think the chief would go back on his words, so I would suspect it was some sort of revenge from the bullies that tormented Rubis. The Elkai Dominion found us and slaughtered us all as if it were that easy. I've heard of such stories about the Dominion, how they are a force of magicka power, and how their influence reaches far across the land. However, my clan, my kin, we were strong, invincible, at least I thought so. Looking back at it all now, I was a fool. You were young. I didn't think that we could be touched, let alone killed. So easily. It was horrible. My family, all of my siblings, my parents, everyone gone, just like that. They didn't spare anyone. We were lucky enough to be saved by our uncle, who hid us away in a forest the Elkai could not reach us. Something about a barrier that protected the forest from the blood of Elkai especially. It's where we lived most of our young lives in until we became of age and stronger as a result from the dangers of the forest. Kanida laid her head on her knees. It's also where we learned to use our magicka without fear of the Elkai Dominion. She then looked at her open palm and turned it over, mulling over a thought before looking to Arcus with just here eyes and wisely deciding against it, having it rest around her hugged leg again. We never knew about our use of magicka until we came across a band of different sort of beastkin that took us all in and taught us the meaning of magicka, how to use it, and something called a soul affinity. Kanida screwed up her face again. I'm not quite sure I understand it all fully, but it has helped me understand the nagging feeling I felt inside my guts for a long time now, how to release it and what to call it. Kanida straightened out herself along the bed and threw her legs over to the side before crossing them. She seemed to look better in the face as she proudly exclaimed her magicka. Apparently my magicka is some sort of Ashur magicka, but for some reason it looks different. It's not like the regular color of Ashur, it's more dark in color. Kanida looked to Arcus for answers, to which she was only given a hum of thought. There are many aspects to one's magicka. Ashur can come in many colors with their own strength as well. The fact that your Ashur looks different to you means that you have one that differs from your brothers, correct? Dark in color could mean anything in this case. Describe the behavior of your Ashur magicka for me. Kanida looked towards the ground, gathering her thoughts in an attempt to explain how her magicka works. I'm not quite sure of it myself, but I can try. It's the same as Ashur magicka, where Ashur can burn. However, I have noticed that my use of Ashur does not burn like it should. I can't explain it, but it's like it burns on the inside of certain things. I never wanted to try it on flesh. However, one of the mentors of the guild we were in advised that I should experiment on them with the assurance that he would not be harmed in the process. I was afraid that I would hurt him if I did so, but being a mentor meant that he knew what he was doing, right? So I did. At first, nothing seemed to happen to him, which was the strange part about it. He wasn't set ablaze like I feared would happen, But later, over time, he explained that he felt a pain inside of him, like his insides were burning. This was days after our training, and the result left a black burn mark on him that did not heal. He further went on to say that this black burn, even several days of healing, would not subside in the pain it caused, nor would it lessen in the intensity of that pain. Kanida smoothed her hands over her knees and swallowed, feeling the familiar ping of guilt clog her throat. I can never stop thinking about that either. He didn't die, however. What does that mean? Why would my magicka do something like that? Am I evil? She looked to Arcus again, tears of fear in her eyes. Arcus had no words for her and looked into her in silence, his grimace evident in his face. He couldn't exactly explain that sort of magicka himself. Although the affects of that sort of magicka was similar to that of corruption, the source of it and attributes were different, so he wanted to believe. Perhaps the infection of corruption was not always directly from the source or afflicted through the use of black magicka. Perhaps this rare form of it can also come from the use of the other elements, such as ashur. In this case, for corruption can be instilled into any living being. However, the answer to whether or not the creature before him was evil was easy enough for him to answer. He'd smile at her, pulled up his chair close to her, and rested his hand on her knee. This prompted Kanida to look at him through her worried-filled mind and caused a sensation of peace. The moment he placed his hand on her knee, she felt a wave of relief wash over her, like a snap that quickly dispersed the ickiness she felt inside. You are not evil. Your magicka does not make you who you are. This black ashur you have does not mean you have an evil soul within you. How you choose to use this given ability is what makes you who you are. No one is born righteous nor evil. We all choose this within our own lifespan. The innate ability to choose is what makes the difference between what is and what isn't. Kanida wasn't quite prepared to hear that from another being. Perhaps her guilt over what she said and did to her brothers kept her from not wanting to believe that she wasn't a good person. However, the confidence in the words of her now mentor soothed the conflict within her heart and eased it, if for a moment, as well as the numbing mumbling of her mind, now silent for the first time since departing from her brothers. The fact that you question that in the first place means that you are not of evil, nor do you have evil intent in your heart. You grieve over your brothers and worry about their safety while taking responsibility for acting out the way you did. That's not the behavior of someone that is evil. Arcus nodded his head as if to conclude something between them, before pulling away again and placing the chair back to where it was near the door with just a single move backwards. I hope that stills your mind from the troubles that have been assaulting it thus far. Take some assurance in my words and let it lay in your mind and heart as truth, so that you may rest easy and be at rest with yourself, Kanida. You are a worthy being of such. Don't worry, I will stand guard. With that said, Arcus sat back in the chair and crossed his arms again, his attention never leaving her once more. Kanida sighed and let her eyes wander around the room, allowing any doubt to die out along with his words to replace them. With one last sigh, she pulled herself back into a laying position, back facing the wall, and allowed sleep to come to her naturally. Eventually, she did find herself falling asleep with no memory of how or how long it took for her to do so.